It is certainly a lot easier to keep up with the NFL than catch up on the NFL, and that's what we're trying to do here. LVC here with Ron, and I'm going to pass it over to Ted. Ted, what's going on with you? We missed you this morning. How's life treating you?
Well, it's all good, Chris. Thanks a lot. And welcome back to the Inside Blitz, everybody. We're going to talk about some key things that are happening now. Very topical. Of course, the owners' meetings just ended. They came up with a couple of new wrinkles on the overtime rules, and I'm wondering what you guys are thinking. I'm thrilled that at least both teams have a chance in overtime. I'm not so thrilled it's not during the regular season. What do you guys think?
Well, I have spent quite a bit of time tweeting out my frustration. I just think I think it's absolutely preposterous that you only give the ball to one team in the playoffs, potentially. So the rules have changed. It's offensively geared. The old adage of, well, then make a stop just doesn't count. There's just too much of an advantage. And you've got the very best quarterbacks in the leagues in the playoffs. So it really made it uniquely unfair in the playoffs. But over time, we've seen in the regular season, it hasn't mattered as much. It's about 52% goes with the coin flip. But I'm very happy with it. From what I understand, the second team gets a great shot to either have that consideration of kicking the extra point and it going to a third possession or going for two. So it's going to be interesting to see, who wants the ball first, who wants the ball second, and what the people do in that second position if they get that second tying touchdown before the PAT attempt.
Okay, so you answered my question, so I don't have to ask the question. My comment is contrarian, even though I completely understand that this is a higher scoring league and everything you said, Chris, makes sense. I still would have preferred it the same way. Buffalo, I know they feel like they should have had the ball. I say stop them in the last 13 seconds. You had the ball in the lead and you were kicking off. Stop them and there wouldn't have even been an overtime. I understand the dynamics of the game have changed and the quarterback position is so important, but you have 60 minutes to get this right. I'm okay with the change, but if you asked me which one I would prefer, I would have stayed status quo.
You sound like you're older than me, Ron.
Yeah, you old fuddy-duddy.
I didn't think that was possible being older than me. Actually, you are older than me. But anyway.
Okay, viewers weigh in.
We're taking an application for the bottom square.
Look, the last time I checked, Johnny Unitas is not a quarterback anymore, and the rules are incredibly different, and it's totally unfair to have this kind of offense go to just one team in overtime. It makes no sense. I know what you want defensively at the end of a game. That's great too, but it's still your defense against those offensive rules. If you end up a tie, you end up a tie. Come on, do something about it and make it fair.
You know what? I will say this. The USFL has their overtime rule, and I think that is actually better than the old overtime rule that Ron likes. What their rule is going to be is, I believe, that they line up on the 2-yard line, and it's sort of like hockey and soccer shootouts. I said it. But they get 3 shots at making the end zone, and that's not entirely bad.
I think it is.
I think it's
the NFL
better than the last
awful.
overtime rule. And then one other cool rule from the USFL. They're going to have a 3-point play possible on the PAT conversion from the 10-yard line. You get 1 shot for a 3-point attempt. So a 9-point game will be 1 possession. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, well, I have thoughts on the shootout. First of all, I come from the IHL, the International Hockey League, back in the 90s when we had the shootout and everybody laughed at us and the crowds loved it. And now it's in the NHL when they said it was all minor league junk. So it works, but it doesn't work in the playoffs. And we can't do that. We can't do that in the regular season and in the playoffs in football. I think it totally applies there.
I just want to create some controversy. That's all. We can't all agree on the subject. I'm okay with the change, but I would have been okay without it just as easily.
What do you guys think of Tyreek Hill going to the beach of Miami? I didn't see that one coming.
I don't think Tyreek Hill saw that coming. So how would you have seen that coming? Mm-hmm. Look, you asked for a lot of money. You're under the circuit. You're getting close to 30. You got the cap issues in Kansas City. It all makes sense. I love the fact that Kansas City got a lot of draft picks for a guy like that, no matter how great he is. That's just an incredible deal for them. Doesn't help them immediately, but if they don't screw up the draft picks, it's a fantastic trade, actually, for both teams. Although Miami, they need draft picks, don't they? I know, Ron, you've talked about them in the past. They I guess they're up and down on what they do in the draft. But if they do some good things, maybe they can get out of the doldrums in the South Beach.
You're hitting my wheelhouse now with the draft. And it just so happened about 2 hours ago, I was on Miami. I'm going through each team's needs now that free agency is 90% through. And I was shocked, absolutely shocked that Miami came up with very few needs.
Really?
So in one sense, for this year, giving up an incredible amount of draft capital for a wide receiver, which no wide receiver is worth, especially since you can replenish them in the draft so easy. Every draft has great wide receivers. They gave up a 1, a 2, and a 4 this year, and a 4 and a 6 next year. 5 picks for Tyreek Hill, who you don't know, but you pray stays out of the South Beach nightlife and stuff like that. Because if he's not on the field, this is just going to blow up in Miami's face.
And it also is something that you also pray, if you're a Dolphins fan, that your guy with the 3-letter first name, named Tua, is able to find him like Patrick Mahomes did. It's the old question, how much did Aaron Rodgers make Devontae Adams great and vice versa? We will not know until we know.
Well, I think by any metrics, I believe Tua has been rated the most accurate, or if not the most accurate, one of the most accurate passers in the NFL. He can't throw for distance, and he's had his issues with the line and stuff, but he's an accurate passer. So, and you're going to get a guy that cuts across the middle, or that he's going to be able to get the ball too fast, and is going to be able to make the moves after the catch. So
let's hope.
I thought
this is.
Go ahead, Ron.
No, this is Kenny Stabler light. Now, I don't mean to say he's Kenny Stabler, but he throws a slant pass just like Kenny Stabler. He's got 2 accomplished offensive linemen joining Tyreek Hill in free agency. They've upgraded their offense tremendously. Wide receiver, 2 new running backs, 2 new offensive linemen that are already their 2 best offensive linemen. And if Tua doesn't work out, you have the pretty careful, cautious Teddy Bridgewater backing him up. This is dress for success for Miami right now, and it better be, because in the background, Kansas City is going to be able to replenish their roster.
Right. Well, the key words are right now, right? Because you say right now for them and not right now for Kansas City. So we'll see how that works out. But in the meantime, Kansas City has added Juju, and they're not done yet either. We got the draft.
My feelings on this immediately was that this kind of hurts Kansas City for one season, but that draft capital is just going to be amazing. As Ron and I talked about before last season, Kansas City had a real offensive line problem, and they filled some holes, and that offensive line really turned around throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
So, they're going to be able to put these young guys in the lineup, but, it's going to take a little time for them to mesh. I think Hill's one of those players that was really important to that team, a little bit of heart and soul, and it's going to take some acclimation to fill that void. But I think that they're going to be fine after a little time goes by.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyreek Hill is a kind of player that can improvise. Mahomes improvises. So the fit was absolutely perfect. I trust they'll find that in the future. They do a good job, really good job of drafting. Andy Reid has his pulse on what works in the NFL. So I'm not too worried. Agree with you, Chris. A little bit of a step back now. And maybe a step back because what happened in the division in the last few weeks. I mean, everybody is trying to beat Kansas City, and Kansas City lost a little ground. So it's going to be a dogfight.
None of us mentioned actually the brilliant move of the money. I mean, this really helps Kansas City on the money front. I mean, geez, just they weren't. You can only afford so many contracts, and to get 5 draft picks, just awesome move.
Yeah, I mentioned the cap, and that's not going to be coming into play now because now they can do what they need to do and for the long haul, which is great, which means that they're set. If they don't screw up the next few drafts, they're set for several years.
Yeah, so this segues into guaranteed contracts. Not that Tyreek Hill has a guaranteed contract, but what we're seeing now is big money players are going to be moving more than ever, and they're going to be demanding more than ever money. Whoever thought when Tyreek Hill was drafted as a 5th-round draft choice that he would be one of the top 2 highest paid wide receivers in the league? And now you have a situation where you're throwing money out there, guaranteed contracts in a very violent sport with a hard salary cap, or relatively hard salary cap. And it's all about what your owners and what your GM can manage with your quarterback taking up roughly 20% of the cap if you're not on a rookie contract.
Yeah, for those of us who have been alive since Don Hudson played receiver for the Packers, and that's 2 of us here almost. Anyway, and not you, Vegas, Chris. Anyway, guarantees were never, it's not even a word in the NFL. The only guarantee you had was that there were going to be a bunch of games on Sunday. That was the only guarantee. Now you got guarantees that totally changes the league because free agency is now affected in a different way, and it's going to restructure everything because you get a disgruntled player. It's like, hey, buddy, we'll get you out of here. Good luck. Have a nice life. Here's your $100 million. We'll do what we can with the trade capital that we cashed in on your ass. That's the way.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Kirk Cousins had the first fully guaranteed contract when he went to Minnesota, didn't he, Ron?
He did. It was 3 years. It was roughly $75 million. I hope we don't get into a Major League Baseball kind of situation where we're guaranteed contracts over 3 years. It just shouldn't be that way because you could have a serious injury at wide receiver. You could have a suspension, whatever it takes. Devontae Adams, for example, how old is he? Is he 30?
I don't think he's 30 yet.
Okay, he's not 30. So he's still in his prime, and he's going to be, he got in a good situation with his college buddy and stuff like that. But we're going to see some contracts in the future. I guarantee it. Speaking of guarantees, that the best years are going to be behind them, just like Major League Baseball. And we're going to pay them based on performance that was in the past, not what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, but the perfect example is Deshaun Watson. He's got this giant guarantee now of a guy that we don't guarantee what. We don't even know what his guaranteed life is going to be like in the next 2 years. You know what I'm saying? It makes no sense.
Well, and let's take a look at Watson. Who do we have coming up for a contract that's comparable? A little known quarterback from Baltimore?
Yeah, totally.
Let's compare these 2 quarterbacks. Watson has never won a playoff game. Watson has never won a road playoff game. The resume is not even as good. And it's going to get very interesting. And as the Baltimore owners, was quoted, I forget what he said, but he was kind of like, well, when he saw that the Watson's contract was fully guaranteed, he made the comment of I don't think.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's good for him, but we're not doing that.
Basically, that's what he said.
Exactly. And they shouldn't do that because now you got a different style. You got a guy who's going to run around. He's more prone to get hurt. And I don't care what age he is. He's not going to last the long haul if he plays like this. If his guarantees are up the yin yang, it doesn't matter because he's not going to last if he plays this style.
You guys are too kind because what I interpreted as him saying is this was stupid. This is bad for football. This is bad for the league.
It is stupid.
It's totally stupid, but it's more stupid because of who they gave it to. Not what he did, not what he potentially did legally or illegally, but the facts are we don't know the facts. That's the problem. So you got a giant unknown with a huge cloud, and you're affecting your fan base too, because they're mixed. They're 50-50 whether or not they even want this guy there.
But I think the automatic comeback when a player asks for the guaranteed contract is the team can just say, "Hey, listen, you show me another team that became better by following what the Cleveland Browns do, then I'll go ahead and match that contract." So,
good point.
Mimicking the Cleveland Browns hasn't gotten very many teams very far. So, and speaking of that, what's going on with Baker? Where the hell is he going to go, Ron? I'm kind of lost in space. Does he just get dropped? Is he tradable?
Well, Cleveland got themselves into this own mess. So now Baker Mayfield isn't worth anything because they were all in twice on the Watson situation. So it's bad for Cleveland because they're not going to get compensation of value for Baker Mayfield. And it's bad for Mayfield because he's left waiting in the wings. He could even be cut, to be honest. Because there's $18 million on the books for Baker Mayfield guaranteed this year.
Well, would you cut him or would you trade him for very little? Which one's better?
I would be creative. I would trade him for a 6th-round pick this year because I feel so strongly about this year's draft. And I would trade him for a 6th-round pick next year that is redeemable up to a 4th based on playing time or wins or something like that. I would be creative for 2023, and I wouldn't mind taking a lower pick this year because of the value of the players.
Let's not forget, he's a bargain. I think 18, 19 million, he's a bargain for if he's healthy. And that brings me to another question is, was he a fool? And is he going to be the poster child going forward for playing through injury? Because I don't really like the guy. It rubs me the wrong way, draws too much attention, but I do respect that the guy tried to play through pain, and maybe it was selfish for playing for a contract or keeping his job. I don't know, but is he going to be the poster child for people no longer playing through injuries as much because he cost himself a lot of money?
Chris, you brought up about 300 points, and they're all valid, all of them. I don't think there's any one that's wrong or right. I think there's a little bit of all of that. And at the same time, you got a guy here that's not the greatest leader in the world. But let me tell you something about Baker Mayfield. He bugs the hell out of me in many ways. But I wish more people, and it's his fault for this, but I wish more people would always remember he is one of the greatest success stories in the history of football. To be a walk-on twice, to win a Heisman Trophy, and to be a first overall pick, to me, is like Hollywood movie stuff. It really is. It's unbelievable where he is now compared to the guy who was just trying to be accepted in some practice in school. So I love that story, but he has screwed it up in a few different ways because too much it's all about him, unfortunately.
Well, I'll take Baker Mayfield's side on this one. It's a blessing and a curse that he comes out that when he's on the field, he's unbelievably team oriented and he wants to be out there for his team no matter what.
Absolutely.
And they had a backup in Case Keenum that would have been a better fit for the last couple games when they were still in the playoff hunt. And he wanted to be out there. It's Cleveland's coaching staff that I think should have drawn the line and said, "You're hurt, Baker. The best chance for us to win is to bring out Case Keenum, who has proven to be a reliable relief pitcher, not a full-time guy, but he's like Colt McCoy in Arizona. You give him a few innings, a few quarters, and he can get the job done." I like Baker Mayfield's attitude. I think some people will have that attitude. We see it out of Matt Corral coming up for Ole Miss, who played in the bowl game and got hurt. He said he would never not be out there for his teammates. And some people are going to be looking at dollar signs in their head and saying, "No, I'm not going out there. I'm skipping this. I'm skipping that." So I don't think it's going to set a precedent. But I think the people who have any hesitation at all might point to it and say, maybe I won't be out there.
Okay, so before we get to Jimmy G, what team is best for Baker?
Carolina.
I don't know.
Carolina.
I really don't.
I mean, if Carolina strikes out in the draft, and that's a story for another day, but Carolina has no second and third round pick. They can't be going around picking a quarterback in the first round without support around the person. But so if Carolina strikes out in the draft and they want a 1-year fix because Matt Rule's job is on the line, then have the two guys duke it out. Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, best man win from the same draft.
Yeah.
I still like Darnold to San Francisco for Jimmy G. I think that makes sense. I think they'd be happy in Carolina, and the role of backing up would be well known in San Francisco, and he plays a little bit more similarly to that scheme that they're going to want to run.
If I'm San Francisco,
I call that perfect.
But if I'm San Francisco, I keep Jimmy G over trading him for Sam Darnold.
So
I really do. I had no problem keeping him because he's a quality guy and he's not going to put up a bunch of crap in the locker room because he's first or second string. So he's got 1 year left in his deal, and I think he'll honor it and do it honorably.
Well, I think if you're Sam Darnold, you want to leave. I mean, not Sam Darnold. I think if you're Jimmy G, you want to leave.
Because they don't watch
I think he's been the writing's on the wall. At the most, he's going to come in because of injury only. He has a chance to start, especially if Chris's trade proposal goes through. Then he is the starter for Carolina. And I think what Chris said, which Sam Darnold would be that relief pitcher, that he has the tools to succeed as long as he has a stout running game with him. And whether that be Deebo Samuel creatively or one of the other running backs, their rookie running back from last year who had a great season as a rookie. And Shanahan's system always runs the ball effectively.
Right.
These are the tools that Sam Darnold needs. Maybe Sam Darnold is better off in San Francisco and Jimmy G is better off in Carolina.
Makes a lot of sense, no doubt. But now the question is Jimmy G's shoulder, okay? We went from what he was worth at the end of the season, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, even the team didn't know it. He has shoulder surgery on his throwing arm. I don't know how serious it is. Who the hell knows? But bottom line is, his value in a trade went from way up here to we'll give you a bottle of peanut butter. I mean,
that's why we're not going to see anything on Garoppolo until the end of July, beginning of August, when the surgery's all healed up. So it's off the board for a while.
I could also see him in Seattle, but they're not going to trade within a division.
Yeah.
No.
Seattle's on their own island. They're going to – who knows what they're going to do.
As Pete Carroll winds his career down over the sunset, right?
Ron, we have less than 30 days to the draft. I know this is your favorite time of year. What do you look forward to? I know that you've got day 1, you got day 2, day 3. What is the most exciting part of the draft for you?
Yeah, so this is my time of year. I'm very busy. I've already, first rank order of the incoming. I've got the team needs going. I've got all this stuff going. And this is, to me, the draft that I've been looking forward to the most in the history of the 3 to 4 decades that I've been looking at the draft. It's so deep. And I'm looking for different things. We have not seen a day 1 like we're ever going to see, because 7 teams have multiple picks in day 1. Never, ever have we had that. That's what fascinates me most about the first day of the draft. What are the Jets going to do at 4 and 10? What are the Lions going to do at 2 and 32? What are the Eagles going to do? Probably trade at least one of those picks at 15, 16, and 19. Kansas City and Green Bay, both looking for replacement wide receivers, and they're drafting right next to each other, 28, 29, 30, and Green Bay also at 22. Houston starts its rebuild at 3 and 13. The Giants are in a soft division with Dallas having the tougher schedule and so on, and they draft 2 picks in the top 7. It's crazy. It's going to be unbelievable for day 1.
Don't you expect more trades this draft than ever, maybe by far?
If I'm the GM, no. I keep every pick that I have because it's so deep.
But
I
I'm not
trade.
talking about losing drafts, but like trading up, trading down to get multiple picks, because there are so many multiple picks to be had out there.
Well, I think you stand the chance of the Lions getting a third pick. I think the number 2 pick is definitely for sale, and
Exactly.
Philadelphia might be interested in that. I'm not sure who else would, but if they could get 2 picks, somewhere in Philadelphia's range, is that a fair trade for number 2 this year, Ron?
Howie Roseman loves to wheel and deal, so there's a lot of stuff you have to do to move up from 15 to 2 as opposed to 15 to 9. I think you will see Roseman move up, but I don't know if it's going to be all the way to 2. And the problem with this draft, unless you fall in love with Malik Willis, the quarterback, and I'm on record as saying no quarterback is worth a top 10 pick in this draft, but unless you fall in love with Malik Willis, who are you really going to fall in love with that you want to trade up in this particular draft when you have a bunch of edge rushers and a bunch of offensive linemen that are somewhat interchangeable?
Yeah, but the fact that it's the ultimate depth draft gives a lot of teams options they've never had before. So it's what they do with it is obviously what matters.
You know what's crazy?
Another way to look at it also is, with the 7 teams with multiple picks, you've got 25% of the league that doesn't need to show up day one unless they do make some moves. They don't have a pick in the first round. As a fan, no matter how bad the Lions were, at least I'd want to see who they got. 25% of the fans just not going to watch the draft. What's up with that?
Well, the Rams don't have to show up for the next 10 years, but that's another story.
It enhances day 2. That's for sure, because that's when 25% of the league first enters the draft. But it's really an unusual setting for all these teams and the GMs. If you count them, I think there's between 10 and 12 GMs that have 0 years with their current team or 1 year with their current team. And my job as somebody who handicaps the draft is trying to figure out what are they thinking when we haven't ever had them run a draft before, or we've only had them run 1 draft before. And that's going to be just as fascinating.
I thought you told me you were retired, Ron. How are you going to figure out these guys who never thought before during the draft? How the hell are they going to start thinking now? You know better.
I'm going to retire them the way some of them have been drafting. I think I have retired them.
Exactly.
When do we start to feel comfortable enough to start playing some draft propositions?
Ooh.
As soon as you think ROI is good. I have Hutchinson from Michigan as the first player selected, plus 750.
Wow.
He's minus 300 now. Now, on the flip side, I took Cincinnati to draft an offensive lineman with their first pick, forgetting the fact that they were so late in the draft for the first time ever at plus 115, which I thought was incredible value. But now they've signed 3 through free agency. Now, I could have waited, and that deal is long gone. It's not even on the board anymore. At the time, I thought it was value. So it's give and take with return on investment. I liked the Hutchinson's play. I liked the Cincinnati offensive line play at the time. So It's whenever these things pop up and you weigh a whole bunch of factors, and a lot of it is the way I methodically go through the draft. What's going to happen on day 2, for example?
Yeah. Would you still draft, if you're Cincinnati, an O lineman somewhere in the middle just to get some depth, because you're going to need it?
Oh, yeah. They're not done with the offensive lineman, but their first priority right now might be cornerback instead.
Yeah.
And Green Bay needs O lineman now all of a sudden, because they've lost a couple of guys, and they got a few guys coming back from injury, but they don't even know how that's going to go for the long haul.
Doesn't it feel like Green Bay is just this has just been a gloomy, dark, horrible offseason, and they made the number one. Well, they signed the number 1 MVP quarterback. I mean, is this just backfiring in their face? It just seems like.
But you know what? When you would put that kind of money up for one guy, it's never a helpful thing for the overall team. But they can clear things up with one trade and a few good draft picks, and it's not going to be that bad. As a matter of fact, it might be okay, but you're not going to get Devontae Adams first year, whoever the heck it is. But Ron and I talked about it a few times before. Chris Olave from Ohio State, the perfect fit for them, and they would not lose a lot if they got him in the draft.
If you trust Green Bay in the draft, they could be winners at the end of round 2 because they have four picks, 2 in round 1, 2 in round 2. The problem is they had the all-time worst draft ever, as documented by 17 respected NFL draft choices in 2020. And in 2021, they didn't do all that much better, even though they hit on a couple of picks, which for them, it was they've always been a C- draft team, except for 2020 when they were off the charts bad. I'm going to give you a position that correlates to win success that we haven't talked about. That is my take for what I'm looking for in day 2 of the draft, and that's tight end. You may not see a star tight end right away, and you won't see a tight end most likely drafted on day 1, but there are 10 future NFL starters at tight end in this draft.
Wow.
And there's so many teams that could use them. And if you look up and down the lineup of the playoff teams again in 2021, they had a quality tight end. Absolutely. This is what I'm looking for day 2. Who takes the tight ends that I really like?
I think we talked about this before. I think tight ends have always hurt the teams I've been rooting for the most. I mean, a great tight end just chews you up and spits you out. And I don't understand why teams have not focused on making sure that they have a great tight end, at least one, if not 2 on their lineup.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to ever be a priority with so many teams.
Yeah, interesting you use the word priority because Belichick has always been the guy. He's been an awful draft guy when it comes to receivers. He has a history of nothing there, but yet he comes up with the greatest tight ends of all time, or they end up in prison. But still,
or both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's pretty weird. You got the one position where I'm going to pick some guy who's going to be phenomenal, and he has no clue when it comes to receivers.
And you know my story on rookie quarterbacks. They have to have a tall target at tight end to help them because they're throwing through tighter windows. And what did the Jets do this past year? No tight end whatsoever. What did the Bears do? Very little production out of tight end. What did Jacksonville do? Try Tim Tebow at tight end in August.
Yeah, but that's only because they have a coach that doesn't work there anymore.
Yeah. I mean, basically, these guys did no favors for their rookie quarterbacks. And then New England brought in, to your point, Ted, 2 tight ends, established tight ends, and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith to help Mac Jones. Notice the difference in performance.
Total difference. That was the difference in their team because they has nobody else to throw to. And that's the truth.
Well, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. We'll each come up with a final statement. And my final statement is just going to be referencing my Detroit Lions are on the Hard Knocks finally. And I think that might actually be some interesting TV.
And however, I do want you're going to be the only one watching. I'm looking forward to that.
But the process I found out has a bunch of criteria that you could not have been on recently. You couldn't have had this success, blah, blah, blah. They only had a choice of 3 teams. So the Jets, Carolina, and the Lions. And I think we can all agree the Lions are the most interesting of those 3 teams. So I'm happy to see the Lions participating on that show. What do you guys leave for a final thought for the week?
Well, I wish that Alex Karras was still on the Lions because then I would definitely watch that show. But that's been decades, and half the people watching here don't even know who I'm talking about. That's Teddy Karras's uncle. Anyway, I want to know what's going to happen here with the draft leading up just before it starts to see if there are any changes and some trades that potentially can happen because that will affect those couple of days big time. But there's just so many opportunities for some teams to either move up or back even before the draft starts. And if there's a couple of deals before that, that will affect what their needs are. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, so my parting thought is kind of twofold. Number one, I think barring the trades that you're talking about that will put a capper on the free agency market, I think we know, at least my take is, we know everything we need to know about the teams heading into 2022. That's one take. And the second part of that, the 2022 draft, the deepest I've ever seen, is going to lay the foundation, and it's going to be sink or swim. Teams after the 2022 draft are either going to be great or good or better from 2024 on, or they're going to go into a sinkhole because they blew one of the best drafts. This is a futures draft. This is where you build your team for the future. I know what's coming for 2022. The draft's not going to change that. There's not that many elite players. But moving forward, at the end of the third day of the NFL draft, it's going to tell a lot about what organizations are poised to have continued success.
I'm going to look forward to the odds as well to see how those start to change a little bit in a few more weeks from the future standpoint. And speaking of books, I do have a book. I always got to mention that. I hope everybody can check it out on Amazon. There's a great football chapter in there as well. So that's my 3 cents. There it is.
There it is.
Aaron Rodgers on the cover. Thanks, Chris.
So yeah, definitely read it.
Thank you.
On that note, thanks for joining us. Hope to be back early next week with we're going to be looking ahead divisionally a little bit. We're going to be looking ahead at the draft. We're going to be just keeping up with all the happenings and trying not to be boring. Please use the comment section for any questions or comments. We love hate mail, love mail, whatever you have. And we'll see you again next week.
All right, man.